I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're uncovering the gripping history and the current crisis of opioid addiction. We're talking with one of my favorite guests, a terrific author by the name of Barry Gold, and he has written a powerful book. It is called We're Overdosed. This book delves into the origins of opioids, the rise of the pharmaceutical industry, and offers insights on federal legislation to combat the epidemic. Right now, we're going to explore the solutions and hope for the future in this critical conversation. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Barry, great to see you here today on Spotlight. Welcome back.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Great to have you on the show. Your insight is invaluable. Your book title says it all. We're overdosed, and we're particularly overdosed when it comes to opioids. Why is the history of this addiction important to understanding the current crisis?
Well, the history of the addiction goes back to the days when the drugs were unregulated by the government. The government had no central system for regulating opiates. They were included in patent medicines in our country.
Yeah.
Not a good time in history, the latter half of the 19th century,
Mhm.
an era known as Reconstruction, which
Yeah.
we failed to reconstruct.
Right.
And,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
after we tried to hurt each other.
Yeah.
And it evolved to today where companies, there is an issue that I want to raise, and that is, I believe firmly that prescription drugs should not be advertised on television.
Mm.
We are one of only two countries in the world that advertise prescription drugs on TV. The other is New Zealand.
Yeah.
And I think advertising drugs on TV transfers power to the patient in ordering the drug rather than the physician who is prescribing the drug. It's very easy to call your physician and say, I need a prescription for OxyContin.
Right.
No, you don't.
Right. Or I want to lose some weight and I need Ozempic. I mean, everybody on TV is dancing around how happy they are when they take these drugs. And
Yeah,
they're
well,
always like they're at a carnival or something, they're all dressed in bright colored clothing. Then you see here the counterindications of what can happen to you if you take these sudden death and seizures might occur. You know what I mean? It's just like you get the disclosure, but it doesn't really jibe with the happy images that you see on television.
I take Jardiance and I'm learning the song they sing on television. And my doctor says, don't take it at night. You'll get up in the middle of the night and have to go to the bathroom.
Funny, funny, yeah. Amazing, amazing. So they do get us sold on the drugs and thinking that drugs are a quick fix for everything. They are a fix for a lot of things, and they are helpful, no doubt. Like you said, you use Jardiance. I use other prescription medications. After you reach a certain age, it seems like it's part and parcel of living in America. But opioids have been particularly damaging, and people have profited off the pain and suffering of others. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree with that. And don't forget, I'll go back to television. TV ads were exploited to initiate the drug epidemic.
Yeah.
OxyContin was advertised on TV 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and that was a mistake.
Right.
And then the industry itself, they practice this. They have a drug earning $1 billion. We have to have a drug just like that to sell $1 billion. So before you know it, we have 12, 15 opioids on the market. We only need about 3.
Yeah. Exactly. And those should be distributed, of course, judiciously because they can be very, very harmful to people's lives. Obviously, for chronic pain, you might need them, but addiction is a real threat. Tell me a little bit about some of the proposed federal legislation that is out there to control prescription opioids and its potential harmful effects.
Well, the proposals out there came from my book. And I
That's
mean,
great.
I either have a lot of foresight or I'm blowing smoke. But anyway, I proposed, I said, first of all, we have to eliminate paper prescriptions. They're too easily forged. Well, in most states, opiate prescriptions are not written on paper, they're electronic. So that's taken care of. In New York, there's a feedback mechanism by which physicians who prescribe opioids have a little machine that signals them from the pharmacy that says, "Do you really want to give this patient opioids?"
Hmm.
I don't understand it very well, but we're gradually gaining control of the prescription market. But secondly, I believe firmly that opioid prescriptions should be written centrally, not state by state. And the example I give, I live 8 miles from the New York border. If I find a pharmacy in New Jersey that will not fill my prescription, I can take that prescription across the border to New York and find a pharmacy that will fill the prescription. Nobody cares that it was written in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Well, that's unfair.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make sense. And that says, let's centralize opiate prescriptions, make them electronic. It gives our government an opportunity to monitor them to the prescription. There's no variability if the feds are monitoring it on a computer. And secondly, they can look at a patient and say, don't fill any more opiates for this patient. He's had 2 prescriptions in the last 2 weeks. And I think that's a direction we have to aim at. But that involves rewriting the way we write prescriptions in this country,
Right.
where prescriptions, while drugs are scheduled centrally by the Drug Enforcement Administration, and Schedule I drugs, for example, heroin, have no medical use.
Right.
But they're administered state by state. And I don't think the states' rights advocates would complain if the feds said all of a sudden, we're going to do this prescription centrally. And but I advocate a strong central government anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not a big candidate for states' rights.
Yeah. Well, it only makes sense. States' rights might have a place in certain things, maybe in education and so forth. But when it comes to pharmaceuticals and prescription drugs, like you said, it's too easy to go pharmacy and doctor shopping from state to state if each state has a different set of rules and is not aware of what the other is doing. So that's a great common sense solution that you propose, and hopefully the federal government picks up on it. Let's give the folks at home an overview of your book. Tell us a little bit about it.
I started writing We're Overdosed by looking at the history of opium because I'm a history nut. I tell everyone I'm a brass plaque junkie, forgive the language. We're talking about opiates. And I'll read every brass plaque there is.
Right.
And I was in Dresden, Germany one day, representing an American company who was looking to license a drug from a company in Dresden. And I was running across the lobby and I saw a brass plaque. Now, it was in German. I understood enough. I stopped to read it. And it said aspirin was invented here. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I'll have to remember that. Well, 20 years later, when I was writing We Were Overdosed, I remembered that aspirin was invented by this company in Dresden, Germany. So I wrote to them. They remembered me. I was shocked. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, what did I do?
To leave such a lasting impression.
20 years later, wow.
Yeah.
And I found out that heroin was invented by the same guy who invented aspirin. And I thought, now
Wow.
that is interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And how did he invent it? He was charged with trying to invent a drug, and he started adding acetic acid, which we know as vinegar,
Hmm.
to a bunch of chemicals to try to make different chemicals. And he invented aspirin,
Wow.
which is known as acetyl salicylic acid. He added vinegar to salicylic acid, which came from a tree. And he added he added vinegar to morphine,
Mm.
and he made diacetyl morphine,
Mm.
known as heroin.
Wow.
And the German word he proposed for the drug was heroisch,
Mm.
which means heroic in German.
Huh.
And that's because it made patients unafraid to have surgery.
Mm.
And that's how heroin was invented by a chemist in Dresden, Germany. So that fascinated me, and
Yeah.
I weaved that into my book. And then I just kept going. I thought, well, what about addiction? What about what's the statistics? And I found out that 110,000 people a year were dying in the U.S. because of opiate overdose.
Mm.
So I did a chapter on addiction. What can we do to help addicts? And I counted up the number of drugs on the market, and I wrote a chapter on the number of drugs on the market. And I just kept going. And before I knew it, the book took over and told me what to write. And I worked on it 4 years.
Wonderful. Well, it's an important book because we are really in the stages of a crisis in America with opioids and other drugs as well. And they seem harmless at first because you get the prescription often from your doctor, and a good, well-intentioned person doesn't realize that they could be going down a very troubled path. Before we go today, I understand you've recently completed another book that tells the story of your life. Tell us a little bit about the memoir you've been working on.
I've written a memoir entitled Boomer Dad, A
Hmm.
Lifetime of Resilience, Endurance, and Disconnection. Where does the disconnection come from? I've been divorced twice, sadly.
Yeah.
So I lost contact with any in-laws I ever had.
Yeah.
3 weeks after my marriage failed, I met a woman, and we've been together 5 years, and I'm very happy with that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. It's good. As
And
long as there's a happy ending, that's all that matters,
happy
right?
ending.
Because
I'm a happy person.
we're writing our books chapter by chapter, day
But
by day.
more to the point, I've not only have I had two marriages, I've owned 9 homes
Hmm.
in 5 states. I climbed the career ladder as a researcher, wearing a white lab coat and a mask, and I gave that up and I moved into the white collar world. And I joked in my memoir, I said, well, I moved into the white collar world until I retired. Wait, I'm still a white collar worker. I write every
Exactly.
day.
Exactly. Exactly.
And and I worked in Europe 10 years, which was fascinating.
Yeah.
So hence Dresden, Germany.
Right.
Uh, so that's my memoir. But also the resilience part of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wrote a chapter. I said, hey, 25 years ago, I was a young man and I had a
Right.
heart attack.
Hmm.
I flew in from Germany in the morning and I had a heart attack in a driveway that afternoon.
Right.
And I drove myself to the hospital, saved my own life, ended up in heart surgery a week later, and went skin diving in Mexico 3 weeks after my heart
Wow.
surgery.
Amazing.
I won't say
Amazing.
that was smart, but I did it.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the
Exactly.
resilience in me. Nobody can hold me down.
Well, that's wonderful. Life is a comeback story. I mean, I think that's just part of it. We're all going to have our ups and our downs, and we're going to all fall and get knocked down. But it's whether you get up and get back up again and fight that good fight each day. I think that's what matters, and that's what makes all the difference in the world.
I tell a funny story. I met this woman and started dating 3 weeks after my ex wife and I split. And she said to me in a moment of civility, "Are you sleeping with this woman when we were married?" And I said, "Lady, at my age, nobody sleeps with anybody."
That's funny. That's funny. It's a great story, no doubt. It's a life well lived. Looking forward to the information in the book and the anecdotes in the book. It sounds like it's going to be terrific because you have a terrific sense of humor as well as a terrific wisdom as well. The book that we've been discussing primarily today is We're Overdosed. It is a powerful book that delves into the origins of opioids, the rise of the pharmaceutical industry, and this book not only looks at the problems, but offers solutions and offers insights on federal legislation that could help combat the epidemic. Barry, thanks so much for joining us once again here today on Spotlight.
It was my pleasure. I thank you for the invitation.
Pleasure's all mine, my friend. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time. This time, until next time on Spotlight.